Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 241 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. It is Florida Derby week. We are going to be discussing the Florida Derby Day Late Pick 5. It's all stakes. It's very exciting. It's the last major card at Gulfstream Park for quite a while. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. We are close to 1,900 subscribers. You know what that means? We're close to 2K. We want to get to 2K. If you watch the show and you're not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing and just tells YouTube that this is a show people should follow. Hit that notification bell so you know when new content will arise, because we have a lot of shows coming up, big Kentucky Derby preps and things ongoing. And then also smash that like button as well. The more likes that we have, it sends more people to our show. It gives us more revenue. It gives us more opportunity to bring on guests, bigger power picks, etc. You get the idea. Just support the show. You know how to do that. You can follow me on Twitter at HKravitz. You can see on my name tag. And of course, email hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. You can see on the scroll, we've got 2 more live shows this week. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, the Bettin and Boozin boys. The full crew, the regular crew is back. Kyle, Charlie, Patrick. They will be there to talk about 3 graded stakes and 1 non-graded stake on the undercard at Gulfstream outside of the Pick 5. They're also going to talk about some great Final Four bets and predictions they have. You do not want to miss Bettin and Boozin. And Tony Rollo of Crownsway Racing, of which this podcast is very excited about for many reasons. They had a huge score on Saturday with Otago. Crownsway Racing's Tony Rollo will be live also tomorrow night with the Bettin and Boozin boys to talk about their Series E, of which I think some people on this show might know a little bit about at this point, and also their successes. So you're not going to miss that. Another ownership opportunity for everyone out there. And then we will be back, myself, Pete, and Paul, 8 p.m. Eastern, regularly scheduled time Thursday night to discuss the huge day of racing at Oaklawn this Saturday. It's Arkansas Derby Day. Wow, what a great late Pick 5 they have there. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. All that is ready to go. We had a little bit of a break. Everything's up there. The power picks we'll talk about last week, a little bit of down week, but listen, you're going to have your good weeks and your bad weeks. We'll talk about that with Pete and Paul. It's an unbelievable buy. It's been crushing for 2.5 years. Please go ahead. Actually, 1.5 years, not 2.5 years. Check that out as well. Look below the video player. The podcast, the website, hhhracingpodcast.com, another good place to go for great information. Let's see. We got some people commenting already. We've got Michael Osen is here. Let's see. Sean Kane, glad to be back alive. Sean, thanks for joining the show. Christine Race. Christine, Derby Fever in the casa. I agree, Christine. What? Sean is in Series E? Hello. There you go, Sean. I think we have a little announcement to make also. Actually, we're going to make that announcement Thursday. Pete and Paul can hear me. We're going to talk about our formal announcement about Series E on Thursday for us specifically. But anyway, thanks for everyone watching the show. We greatly appreciate it. All right, let's get to my fantastic co-host. You know what? I don't know why I always introduce Pete first. I'm sure he would say it's because he's most important. But you know what? Let's just switch it up a little bit. First, from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, wow, and from the Saratoga Special, Mr. Paul Halloran, and from the great state of Maryland, Mr. Kings Barnes himself, along with Paul Halloran, Pete Visco. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
See what happens when you go out of order? You mess everything up. You just stick with what works. Stick with what works, man.
I agree, Pete. Just for the record, Pete, I would always put you before me if it were up.
Thank you. I assume if like a brown bear was chasing us too, you'd throw me in front too. But I'll take it more as a compliment.
That's correct.
So, guys, I was a little out of sorts yesterday. We're not going to get into it, but just trying to make sense of this crazy effing country that we live in. It's just absolutely disgusting. I put a few things out on Twitter, which I normally never do. As you guys know, I pretty much avoid anything controversial or, I don't know, any serious issues. But and we're not going to talk about it. I just have to say, as a teacher, I'm just not going to be silent about certain things, guys. The whole situation's awful. And just hopefully this country figures some shit out. I'm just going to leave it at that, guys. I think we'd all agree with that. Another thing we got to talk about is last week, Saturday. First of all, congratulations to both of you who snuffed out King's Barnes at $9. What do you pay?
11.
11. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I got to tell you, Howard, he drifted all the way down to like 3-1, Pete. I don't know if he got to 5-2. He definitely got to 3-1. And I said, well, I'm not going to play him flat. You're 6-1 morning line. But I may have hit the exacta more than once.
Nice. Yeah, I did the same thing. I was looking at the odds and I'm like, I won't bet a win bet. And then was like, holy crap, why is he 9-2 now? And I missed it. But luckily I had the try, if nothing else. So at least I cashed on that. You hit the exacta. So at least we got something out of a good pick for once.
I do want to say, guys,
Penn State Scott, not sure. Yeah, not necessarily.
Penn State Scott,
let's talk about that later. But
yeah, we'll talk about that. And Roshan's going to the Preakness, guys. That's pretty cool. Very exciting.
That's awesome, Roshan. Welcome to Maryland. There's
an outside chance Kyle Roscoe might be going to the Preakness. I don't know if you guys would know why, but we'll talk about it because there's a certain gray turf sprinter that might be pointing to a stake race on Preakness Day. So we'll talk about that a little bit later also. I want to talk about the power picks a second, guys. The power picks for a year and a half. I'm off this week. This is my spring break, so I have a little more time to do some things. I went back and looked a bunch of stuff, and the power picks for a year and a half in general have been killing it, and we document everything. So our words mean nothing. People can look out for themselves. However, last week, admittedly, for us was a little bit of a down week, and listen, we have to be transparent. That's what we do. I just want to inform everyone out there that, whether you buy a power picks or not, or whether you just gamble on horse racing, this is hard. This is hard to do. And you're not going to hit pick fives every week. In fact, you're not going to hit fives, but pick fives most weeks. And you're going to do it certainly more on ABCs than cavemen. And I will readily admit, and I'm certainly man enough to admit this, that Pete and Paul have been better with their pick fives this year in 2023 than I have. No doubt about it. Congratulations to you guys for all those scores. And I've had some scores too. But in terms of the price plays and the spot plays, you guys have done those on rare occasions when I've been out of town or whatever. We're not going to give out Forte this weekend at 4-5, which some people might even not like them at 4-5 anyway. The power picks and the spot plays, the spot plays and price plays on the power picks are meant to find those like diamond in the roughs, those horses that don't look obvious. And you guys have done, I've been doing it for almost every week that we've had our power picks. You guys have done it for a few times. It's not easy. You're trying to find 4, 5, 6, 7-1 shots. First of all, you don't know what the odds they're going to go off at. Second of all, everyone's got information. It's just harder to find bigger prices, I think, these days, because you can see replays everywhere. Pete and Paul, I know you guys go back handicapping a long time like I do. We never used to be able to one click and watch a replay from any track. You used to have a specific ADW, or you have to know someone or watch the track. Just things have changed a lot. I'm not making excuses for anyone. We're still rocking it out. But Pete, every week the price plays and power plays are not going to cash, and that's okay. If you play 5-1 shots, all you have to do is hit one every 5 or 6, and you're even if not up. I think people need to understand when you're playing prices, you don't need to hit that often.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And it's one reason why, too, you want to sort of track it, because then you don't get as bogged down in if you have a couple off weeks, because if you're still up over the course of whatever period you're tracking to, then you feel better. Whereas when we all have those weeks where you're like, man, I couldn't hit anything today. And you just have to, look to the past and say, well, I was good for a while, had a couple bad weeks. It'll get better in the future. I'm not going to get too bogged down with it. And especially though, I think when people are either paying or looking to other people's picks, you maybe get a little bit more annoyed when you don't get winners. But again, it's not like we're picking every race and you're saying, okay, well, I had 3 winners. They happen to be the favorites. You would never give those horses out in the price plays and the spot plays, because there's no value there. Everybody knows to take some 2-1 shot if you think they're going to win. It's the 6-1, the 8-1, the 10-1s that really can bring something home, bring some nice payouts home.
I guess the question I have for you, Paul, or just to throw it out there for the listeners, whether people subscribe to the Power Picks, which by the way started with 4 people. 4. My first week, I looked it up in May of last year. 4 people, and we have a boatload of people now that subscribe. We have a whole army. Paul, do you recommend people look at our grids, look at my price plays or spot plays? It depends on what kind of better they are. What do you recommend that people that subscribe to the Power Picks who are thinking about subscribing, what should they? I mean, we want them to look at everything, but what do you think they should focus on?
Well, first, I think, Howard, it's important, regardless of what you're doing, I think you got to use any outside assistance you get, you should use as a guide. And I'll give you an example. We were all betting Dubai last Saturday morning, and Davy Lane is obviously a great source of international racing. I lean on a guy like Michael Adolphson, who's in Dubai permanently now, and Kelly Riley, who writes for Twin Spires, I have found to be excellent. So I get up Saturday morning. I had handicapped the card Friday night, obviously. And the first 2 races, I kind of got off the horse that I liked. I used the horse that I liked, but in both cases, I used the horse that she liked on top. And the rest of the story. So as far as that stuff, I would say, most importantly, use it as a guide. I mean, I like the grid. I mean, I'm looking at the grid last week. The reason why I don't have all 5 winners on my grid is I don't use my guy Raylu in the Oaks, believe it or not.
I thought you were about to rip up my budget for a second.
No. And you know what? It's in a 5-horse field. I had 2 A's and a B. Now I would have needed to hit an A there. I had 2 A's, a B, a C, and an X. And it looked like, I think the majority of people in that race thought it was going to be the 3, 4, or 5, right? Am I kicking myself with Raylu winning at 7-1 as I'm congratulating him after the race for winning the riding title? Yeah, I am. So I think I think the grid. I would look at the grid way more as a way better resource than the caveman ticket. We've beaten that to death. But I think the spot plays, as you bring out, Howard, you're trying to put people onto reasonably priced horses. So if you see a spot play that is 8-5 and you might not love it, don't go playing that horse. But if you see one that's 15-1, let's get that reverse tri-key action going and hit a big try.
Although Matt Miller brings up.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Matt Miller, who I know he's a friend of mine, he's a friend of all of us, but the fact that whether he was a friend of mine or not, the guy knows how to bet, and anyone who knows anything about contest play understands that. This is what Matt says about the Power Picks. He's a proud yearly subscriber. Let me just say he's the 2021 BCBC champ, for those of people that don't know. He said, especially supplemented by the commentary on the show, are absolute gold, the Power Picks, to people who know how to bet them. Tread lightly on the multi-race bets. He's not really a multi-race bet guy, so that's fine. And Paul, you and I understand the difficulties of a serial horizontal player. Sometimes I think I would admit it, Paul. I'm assuming you would admit sometimes we do it too much. I'll admit that. Absolutely. He loves the selective spot plays. And and I want to end this commentary with what you mentioned, Paul, about Dubai. David Lane is fantastic. He's one of the best punters out there. He's awesome. Anyone that pays attention. He had a rough day in general with his picks in Dubai, but he told me all week that Equinox was a complete superstar and that he's going to win. And you know what Davey did? He did what you should do. He bet, other things other than Equinox, because he's like you and I, Paul, especially, and maybe Pete to some extent with our horizontals. But you know what? He said, I love Equinox. He put a big win bet. I mean, big for him, whatever, and got back to even. So he lost 8 bets and won 1 and was even. That's my point with the price and spot plays, Pete, that you can go 1 for 6 and still have a winning day. You have to, and that's what Matt Miller is saying. Just read the information and pick your spots, and you don't have to hit every bet. In fact, you're not going to hit every bet. No one does. And the best handicappers in the world have bad weeks, if not months. if
Yeah.
not a year. It's a very tough game.
No, it is. I mean, you said it perfectly. There's nothing really to add to that. The only thing I'll say quickly about the grids are they're a little tougher to use unless you say, hey, I like following Paul or I like following Pete or Howard because there's a lot of information and we all put a grid out there. My suggestion would be if you sort of look at it and you do as a supplement. I like, Paul said it as part of, but I like it as a supplementary piece where you say, okay, I like these horses. Let me see if they're including some in their grid. Or let me look at the 3 grids combined and see, oh man, they all have the 5 as an A. So I'm definitely going to include the 5 as an A, but I might like another horse. So I want to throw in my own picks. And then, but it's tough. There's a lot of information out there. You have to pick and choose what information you want to use and how you want to use it. And from there, if it wins, it wins. If it loses, it loses. It sucks because we're losing too. If the picks are bad on there, we're losing our own money. And, it's not like we're not betting these as well.
Look, I had my ups and downs on Dubai. I also gave out a $60 pick 4 that paid almost $700. So look, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people didn't just, cold bet play my pick 4. I wouldn't expect people to, but we give a lot of good information out there and we have plenty of good scores. And one of those scores from last week, Pete and Paul, was your pick on Kingsbarns. Real quick, just 2 minutes. Paul, have you go first. Your thoughts in general going forward on Kingsbarns and also 2 fills. Just a minute maybe on each horse and your thoughts there.
Yeah, I just thought, Pletcher's making all the right moves these days, which we're hoping that continues, Howard, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
But, the race looked devoid of speed, and the consensus horse to go to the lead, if it weren't going to be Kingsbarn, was going to be JC's Road, who was in the 11. And you saw how it worked out perfectly. Sayers didn't really have to hustle Kingsbarns to the lead. JC's Road just backed off just a little bit, and Kingsbarns was inside of him. And I got to tell you, once they got around the first turn and with those fractions, you don't want to get too cocky, but that was over.
49 and change the half.
Yeah,
two fills, very impressive. You got to be happy for Ravelli. I know, Howard, especially you. You're a Midwest guy. Am I going to be lining up to bet a horse in the Derby coming off the synthetic? No. So, but I'm thrilled, totally thrilled that a guy like Ravelli is going to get to the Derby. I will say that.
Pete, there's an interesting comment by, I can't remember. Maybe it might have been David Aragon. I can't remember who it was on Twitter. Is 2 fills the next Tiz the Bomb, who's been pretty disappointing in general, or the next Animal Kingdom? I think it's a great comparison, or something in between. Yeah. And then your thoughts on Kingsbarns also, Pete.
Yeah, for 2 fills, I would sort of go in between. But the difference between 2 fills and the normal synthetic horse is that he was good in his dirt races. He wasn't great. He was, from a buyer standpoint, he was in the 80s, which isn't going to get it done in the Derby. Yep. But he was competitive in a couple of those races, especially, I forget which one it was, 2 back. He did a lot of the dirty work and hung around and was still there. And he's a horse that I looked at as not necessarily a winner of the Derby, but definitely a horse who's tactical enough to hit the board, whether it's the try or the super or even the exacta. So I looked at him that way. This one actually maybe hurt a little bit because you're probably going to get a lower price on him off that monster effort if you liked him at all. But I do think he's different in the sense of he has shown good dirt form. And if you have that, I think you're in a little bit of a better spot. But maybe he just loved the synth and he was fantastic. And then Kingsbarns, he looks great on paper. He's undefeated. He's never done anything wrong. Those fractions were, like you said, 49, 114, 139. He was walking. If he doesn't win that race, something's wrong. That's the only thing, is that he had everything his way. When you get to the Derby, you generally don't have everything your way. And when you're only raced 3 times, it's a little bit tougher if he doesn't get the right post, if he doesn't break well, if he's not as close to the lead. You never know, but he's talented and he can, is he closer to Taba, who was too much too soon when he got to the Derby? Or is he, I don't know, always dreaming, or someone who didn't run a lot and then wins the Derby anyway? It's a tough balance there, what to do with him, I think.
Yeah, we'll see. And follow Pete on Twitter because he puts out a cool Derby top 10 that I know you had some big changes in. He got a great trip in his allowance win too, the race before, against a bad field that came up the rail. I think a fault of mine is I poo-poo too much who they're facing. We talked about this last week, Pete. I mean, they can only do what they can do, right? Which is the same thing with. But I like horses that have dealt with adversity, which is why I'm still big on Tapit Trice, because he's had, maybe it's been for his own reasons, he's had adversity, but he still has faced some adversity. And I like, you're going to face adversity in the Derby 99 times out of 100. So anyway, guys, we're going to move on, but
nobody's ready for the Derby in the theory anyway. That's the moral of the whole thing. Is it's hard to you can't really prepare for what's going to happen when you get there, and who knows how they're going to react to it.
It's like the Dermot Sotogake thing. I mean, sure, he was great, but he went to the lead and no one chased him, and it just, I mean, those kind of races, you're just going to get way overbet over those kind of races. So anyway, we got plenty to talk about the Derby. Got 5 more big Derby preps, including 2 this weekend. The Arkansas Derby and what we're going to talk about right now, guys, the Florida Derby. A ton of people watching. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. The numbers have been off the charts, especially for our live show this Saturday. Please comment in the chat about anything you see. Pete and Paul, my guess is this is the first time as I bring up our I'm going to bring up the Equibase entries here. I'm guessing because it's sort of early in the week, this might be the first time people are taking a look at the pick 5. So this will be interesting conversation. Let's start with it, guys. The pick 5, late pick 5 on Saturday starts, as you can see, about 4:04 Eastern Standard Time at Gulfstream Park. The first race in the late pick 5 is a mile 16th on the turf. The rails are way out for this particular race. 150K. It's for older fillies and mares. You can see the field there. Now, we do not have mooring lines, everyone. Again, we do not have mooring lines. As a field of 10, which is going to make conversation interesting, and I guess you could say a little bit more difficult depending on your thoughts here. Let me go ahead and bring up the banners here and go with our picks. You're going to see a lot of similarities between the 3 of us today on this show. Pete, we'll start with you. You're going to go with the 6, as do I. Market segmentation for Chad and Irad. I'm guessing this filly will be the favorite in this race.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, Klarovich, Irad, Chad are usually, when you get them in a turf race, especially with a horse that looks like it has some talent. And real quick, just to go back to what you said about not having the odds, I know, like my pick 5 ticket, I usually don't put it together. Even if I handicap without the odds, I don't put it together until I see the odds usually for the show, because you don't want to have like 4 horses in a race where you have the top 4 choices. So they may change in theory between today and what comes up this weekend. But yeah, this one, I mean, ran well last time, was pressing the pace, lost to 2 horses who wound up coming back and finishing in the money next out. I mean, it's just, you got 2 wins there. The buyers are strong, even though Timeform even liked the races even more than buyers. So if you're a Timeform fan, this horse looks even better on paper. And I just like the fact that I think you're going to get a good stalking trip with her. So she's going to get the trip she needs. There's no speed really in this race, except for on paper, the 2. So, but I like then that if you're chasing not much speed, at least this horse is pretty tactical and should be in a good position.
Something we're going to do, guys, for every race, because we have it as of now, is they have free Timeform pace ratings with a chart on DRF. I'm not sure how long it's going to last. Let me show everyone, just for people at home, we're going to show this, guys, until they don't have it anymore. This is according to Timeform. You can see on the right side of the screen. It will either say fast pace, slow pace, or neutral. This is neutral because they don't have any indication. They have the 2 on the lead, followed by the 1, 6, and 10. I just wanted to show that, guys. We're going to show that for every race, give people an idea of the pace complexion. Pete, you're going to go, or excuse me, Paul, you're going to go with. I have nothing to add, by the way. I think she's the horse to beat. She was pressed a fairly fast pace last time, although it's not color coded red. I think she's clearly the horse to beat. She's going to get a great trip. She's probably about 6-5, and I think she's going to win personally. You're going with Princess Theorem, Paul, the 8, who ran a big number last time in the Honey Fox at 45-1. And you just think, I'm assuming this horse is an improving mare for Walsh and Jose Ortiz.
Yes, I do think the horse is trending in the right direction, Howard. His buyers, he took coming back this off this layoff last year, starting on the 31st, which is in effect this year. big jumping buyers to 80, 86, 89. You know, his career numbers are okay, but I think if you look a little deeper, he's run 3 times on turf that's less than firm and finished last.
You already said he like 5 times already. Jesus. I mean, if you guys are gonna rip on me, I mean, Paul, come on now. Let's stop with the damn sex issue.
We didn't even get out of the first horse.
Maybe I should say it that way. My apologies to the business.
Yeah.
Anyway, she in her 3 non-firm turf races has been last, and second to last. So I will throw those 3 out.
I clarified.
I think Walsh is doing better than its numbers, not just here, but in other spots. And I look at this race as one of the 2 Ortizes is going to win. Those will probably be the only 2 I use in the pick 5 to get it started.
Yeah, Paul, that one, I like that horse too. I was so worried the fact that I didn't think there'd be enough pace, and she seems to like to linger a little too far back sometimes. That was my only real concern with that one.
Real quick.
If you go 2 back, Pete, the race back, she's mid-pack. And I think with Jose, I think she's going to be a little closer.
That's the hope. Yeah, that's the hope. Yes.
Some quick stats. Pete, you've got the 9 Persevencia in 3rd. Off the layoff, I'm sure you looked this up. Cherie DeVoe, 60 to 120 day layoff. Not horrible, but not great. 9% win, 27% in the money. These are turf layoff numbers for Cherie DeVoe. But Pete, 0 for 5 in grade stakes. I didn't like that. I think she might need one. That's why I didn't put her on. And I'll let you comment in a second. The other one is the 5 with layoffs. I want to mention Cafe. No, not. Let's see. Hold on. Who am I? Why do I motion? Sorry. We haven't talked about this horse. Juza. I watched the replay. She looks like she's tactical. Graham motion, 180-day layoff, a plus layoff with foreign shippers on the turf, guys. They're mainly turf. 17% on the win end, 52% in the money. Again, very good numbers with Graham motion with imports, but only 2 tries in turf stakes, and he's 0 for 2. So I guess the overall point is motion is very patient, usually with his imports. So take it what you will. Maybe you take it as a positive that he's throwing her into a stake right away, because he is good with foreign shippers, but doesn't do it often with stake horses. So Pete and Paul, either thoughts on either one of those 2 stats I gave out?
I had some negative stats the other way on motion with some of the. So this was a tough one for me. I'm with you. You almost have to either throw the stuff out because you just really don't know how they're going to react with some of the foreign shippers. I had one where it was 0 for 11 with foreign shippers shipping to specifically the Gulfstream Park turf. And then 2 for 28 first after a trainer switch. So not related to foreign shippers at all.
Okay. Just
after a trainer switch and going right into a turf stakes race. So those were a little negative. This is a horse I would put on my ticket for sure. It didn't make my top 3, but you have to just because of the unknown and its motion and Rosario, and they know what they're doing. And this horse is bred really well and was pretty good overseas as well. So it's one I think you have to include, if nothing else.
Real quick, guys, and we're going to move on. Jim Pilar's Tabit Trace better win the Derby. My brother's already booked his Vegas room to cash his early wager on Tabit Trace. I love that confidence, Jim. He also said odds are not as crucial at Gulfstream. Love Pete Aiello as a race caller, but as an odds maker, well, let's say he's no David Aragona. I can't disagree with you there. Pete Aiello would admit that he's not, that's not his forte, no pun intended, so to speak. Guys, I'm going to do something. This might be risky, and I'm very honest about this. I don't know if you see this, Pete, but there's you guys don't see it unless you have StreamYard. There's a pen in like a little pen icon on the bottom of the screen, bottom right. I'm going to press it and see what happens, guys. If the show ends, we'll start over. But I'm wondering if I can edit. I wonder if I can draw on this. I don't know. Hold on one second.
Yeah, I don't have that, so I can't see it.
Okay, I don't.
Same here.
I don't know. I'll test it out later, guys. I don't want.
Okay. I was going to say, if you wanted to test it, I had one quick comment on the 9 Perseverencia.
Real quick, let's move on.
Yeah, the only thing I liked about that one, you were right. Except I liked once this horse she switched to DeVoe. the buyers just jumped way up, and the form and the performance actually jumped way up. So at least you could sort of tie it to something. So I like what she's been doing since she got in the DeVoe barn, and then ran a decent second to Delika, and then in the one before that was really a terrible trip and was closing like a beast and at 50-1 and just couldn't get there. But so I'm taking a shot. Hopefully that one will be a little bit more of a price.
Okay. Tom wants to know, Paul, about Super Hoity Toity. Any thoughts on this one as I go? I'm trying to find him or her. Sorry, I did it now. Any thoughts off the layoff for Cassie, Paul, real quick for Tom?
I did look at that. I did look at Super Hoity Toity because it's Cassie, and interesting that Husbands is coming down to ride. Yeah. I mean, the horse is ultra consistent, 5 wins and a second out of 8 starts, solid grade 3. Now, the only, he did win 2 for 3 on turf. So, it's the type of horse, and we don't have the odds, as you said, Howard, but even with those 1s and 2s, this is the type of horse she could get lost a little bit on the board. So to Tom, I think brings up a good point. And I think it's a horse that maybe if you're playing ABCs, you don't want to get beat on. She seems to be maxed out in the low 80s on the buyer side. Yeah. And it looks like the 6 and the 8 might be capable of closer to a 90, but I'll tell you, that's a valid point by Tom. It's a Mrs. Weber, a Live Oak Plantation, Mark Cassie, a $550,000 purchase. So yeah, don't sleep on Super Hoity Toity.
Paul, I was gonna say I like real quick too that this horse is going from 3 to 4, which sometimes you see progression from 3 to 4. So if this horse sneakily progresses from where she was and where she topped out last year, then she can almost get up to that 90. So if you want to take a shot, because you'll probably get a little bit of a price. Sorry, Howard, you're going to say something.
No,
good job, Tom.
Tom, I think it's a prep for Woodbine. That's all I'm going to say. That if you look at the form, she's raced at Woodbine. I think it's a complete prep for Woodbine, in my opinion. Let's move on, guys, because we spent a little bit too long on that race, but that's okay. Next race 11. It's the Sandsbell Island Stakes, 7.5 furlongs. This is for the girls on the turf also. But it's restricted for 3-year-olds. I just want to mention, if you look carefully, the rails are completely down on this race. So what does that mean? That means tighter turns and some fresher ground. In theory, whether you think it's going to help the speed or not, I don't know, but it will be tighter turns, which means saving ground is more important. I feel very confident in saying that. It's a field of 10. Let's go to Paul. Pete and Paul agree. They're both going with the number 5. Breath Away. Christophe Clement has got 2 in here. I know both these horses pretty well. Breath Away is a horse that was touted to me by Miguel. First time out, ran very well. That's who you're going with, Paul, in this race.
I am going with Mr. Clement, first and second here. I picked Breath Away on top, and I picked Love Appeals second. On my ticket, Breath Away will be an A, and I think Love Appeals will be a B. I like Breath Away here. Couldn't close the deal last time, but that was her first time against winners. Took a big buyer jump, 14-point buyer jump. Has had a series of works since. I think there's 4 works in between.
She's the 8, making this big move in the Reeves colors on the outside.
Yes, you will see her.
The Mucho Macho Man silks, by the way, Paul, right? The Mucho Macho Man silks. I don't think she hung. She was just wide, and the horse got a perfect trip up the inside. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, well, she does look like she's going to close the deal here, and does get nabbed in just on the wire inside. But I would agree. I would attribute it more, Howard, to the wide trip than hanging. But I think this horse is a straight A on my ticket, and I think if she gets beat, it's going to be by Clement's other horse, Love Appeals.
Well, let's
by the way,
about...
that lost, the horse that she lost to there came back and lost to Botanical, ran 3rd in the Bourbonette. So it's a quality. It was a decent horse, and maybe not her preferred surface. Hopefully, the synth, maybe Breath Away Breath Away's preferred surface is turf. So that's the hope, at least.
That's what Pete. You've got her on top. Also, is there anything else you want to comment on, Pete, before I talk about Love Appeals?
No. Fire away.
I like Love Appeals more. for two reasons, guys. Number one, the buyer in her first race was just as good, and you figure there's improvement. And this was another horse that I don't know if I tipped this. I think I gave you guys this tip also that Miguel tipped out to me. They liked this filly quite a bit. And she's tactical, guys. I like that a lot. This is what 7.5 furlongs. So I like a horse that's got a little more tactical speed. And this ride that Rosario gave was absolutely brilliant. You can criticize him sometimes, but you can't criticize him for this ride here. And she saved ground the whole way. Yes, I agree with that. But she had to come up. She had to come up the inside, and Rosario just had a hold literally the whole time. And if you watch carefully, I think she wanted to go to the outside. I think Rosario wanted to come right in here, guys, in this spot. But it wasn't there, and then had to go back down to the inside. Paul, for a first-time starter to do that and to still have the acceleration and close like this against a pretty good horse in Delahaye, that shows me a lot. So I really, you watch the gallop out, was very good. That athleticism to me, Paul and Pete, really, I'll just see if we can show the gallop out here. I don't know if we're going to see it or not. We'll see it eventually. There it is. Okay. Anyway, gallop out was very good. The athleticism there, Paul and Pete, was impressive to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not so sure that hole in the middle wasn't there. I think it was there for a second, but he didn't pounce right away. And, the rail, it's not always going to be there on turf races. So there is a little luck involved there too. But it was, one thing I do strongly agree with Howard, for a horse to make that move up the rail in tight quarters in her first start, that is impressive because, it's like with pro sports, right? Practice versus game. You don't have to go through a hole like that in the morning when you're working out in the morning. So, I do think, first start against winners in a stakes race is a bit to ask, but hey, look, no complaints with that horse on my end.
Pete, I'm going to show the replay. I'm going to show the replay, Pete, of Mrs. Astor, and you can talk about this horse, and then we'll move on. This is Jonathan Thomas filly by Looking at Lucky out of a Creative Cause mare. So it's interesting breeding for George Strawbridge stable in Augustin, which I know Paul knows very well, and probably you do, as Pete, very famous connections there. Miss Astor ran big in her maiden with sort of a wide move and did it impressively. We'll show everyone. You can talk about this horse, Pete.
Yeah, real quick, just say I'm with you guys on the 2. It's actually an A for me. It was my last cut to get under budget on my pick 5, so I'm with you guys on the 2. So it's sort of a consensus that's definitely a top choice to have on there. Yeah, this one, I mean, again, the only issue with Mrs. Astor, and it happened here where she's sitting. Yeah, she's sitting actually kind of nice though. It's a really nice spot, but she hasn't shown too much speed. She doesn't get too far back just by luck that she's within lengths, but there's not a ton of pace in this race. But again, in her last race, there wasn't a ton of pace either. And she was able to, as you're watching on the screen, she's able to roll by anyway, even though there wasn't that much pace for her to close into there. And she sort of has had that in each of her races. So that was my only concern with the 1. I have her in second, but it's always a worrisome if you have a horse who's going to fall a little bit too far back and you don't know if they're going to be able to get there. I did have a Jonathan Thomas and Saez, 30% wins, 65% in the money on the turf when they team up. I forget how big the sample size was, but it doesn't really matter. That's a pretty good cut here. And I like that this horse, her buyers have jumped consistently each race, and the time form has sort of jumped with it. So they're also in sync in terms of how she's improving as she goes.
Paul, quick thoughts on Aunt Shirley. I'm not using her. She's got turf breeding on the dam side. Wow, she's out of a Frankel mare, but this is just a really long layoff. And I guess you could say it's an aggressive spot. I guess that'd be the positive, but I don't know. I'm against her personally. I know it's Pletcher and Irad and the layoff, and it's Justify. This would be a hell of a training job against these other good fillies to win this race, in my opinion.
Well, Howard, a horse like this is why I think you have to play an ABC ticket, because I don't want to get beat by this horse. In fact, right now she's a B on my sheet here. But
Interesting.
I don't
She's
want
a
to
C
give.
for me.
I don't want to play her with the same weight as the 5 and 2, right? So
Right.
that's I think why. But and similar, the motion horse we just talked about in the last race, Howard, I think is the same thing. We all said we don't want to get beat by her, but you certainly don't want to give her the same weight as your A's. So, yeah, I'm going to have Aunt Shirley on the grid. It's a long, it's an aggressive spot. It's kind of a puzzling spot. It's a first time with Todd takes over for Rudy Brissett. It's a Windstar Farm horse. I would have to take a look and see if they've owned the horse over from the beginning or if this could have been a purchase. But I'll say this for that horse, Howard. One career start, they thought enough to put her in the spinaway. So someone thought she could run. If you want to, this is not an ambitious spot compared to the spinaway coming off a maiden win at Ellis Park, Howard.
Fair enough. She's the total wild card in this race. We'll see what happens, guys. Let's go on to the next race. Oh boy, the 3-year-old fillies, guys, strap it in because these 3-year-old fillies, other than wet paint, who the hell knows? It's the Gulfstream Park Oaks presented by FanDuel. It's the third leg of the Pick 5. They're going for $250,000, guys. A mile 16th, of course, for the 3-year-old fillies on the dirt. You see, it's a field of 8. The morning lines are out for this race and for the Florida Derby. The morning line favorite here is the New York bred, Paul. New York bred, number 5, Miracle, for Pletcher and Irad. Pletcher's got 2. He's got a little bit of a fan. I'm a little fanboy of the other horse who has not worked out the last 2 starts. Let me go ahead. Did I already switch the picks? I did not. Let me switch the picks right now. Let's go to Pete. We are all over the map on this race, which doesn't surprise me based on this field. Pete, you're going to go with a fresh face. You're going to go with the 7, Sacred Wish. This is a George Weaver and Castellano horse coming off a maiden score. What do you like about this one, Pete?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, although the last race that she was in was sort of came back as a pretty weak field, but again, I don't mind a weak field if you beat the weak field impressively, like you're supposed to, if you think you're a good horse. This one should have some tactical ability. I like the fact that even though she's stretching out for the first time, sire side, so not this time, who's a huge sire, obviously 23% in dirt roots, so I'm not too worried about that, even though there's a little Indian Charlie on the bottom. The one concern is first time off Lasix. You never like that, but I did have a couple George Weaver stats. 41% win, and you're watching on the screen here where she wins this race pretty much in hand. I mean, she gets a couple touches, I think, just to keep the business, but for the most part,
actually.
Yeah, that's what I liked,
First
especially as soon as she got hit with the whip, she sort of exploded a little bit.
She did.
Weaver, 41% wins first after the trainer switch over the past few years. And then Weaver with a jockey change, so picking up Castellano in dirt roots, which is very specific, but 32% wins, 68% in the money. So again, this combination has been successful. George Weaver's been successful, picking up a horse first time. And I think this horse just has some talent, and I'm not too concerned with the field didn't come up very strong because normally you might not want a maiden breaker, a recent maiden breaker in a graded stakes race. But this field didn't come up with, anybody I'm super worried about.
I also noticed this black type thoroughbreds, which I did not notice before. And I have mad respect for Jake Ballas and that ownership group. They are that's past the Champagne group along with a bunch of others. So I'm against her because I think it's a very tough situation, but there's no question she's talented, Pete. And these 3-year-old fillies are extremely hard to predict. You've got Dorothy Vader second, Pete, and trust me, Pete, this has nothing to do with you because I got mad respect for you, obviously. She's got to prove it to me again. She's got to go 2 turns. There's other speed. Maybe she's just better than I give her credit for, and she'll prove it again. She's going to have to prove it to me again. It looks like Paul feels the same way.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, I think the thing with her is 3 out of those. Those last 3 of the 4 were quality wins, regardless of whether she was beating anyone. But again, this isn't your typical graded stakes field where there's a huge step up in in competition. So I don't know. Like, I think the race 2 back, she sort of dueled herself and sort of killed herself a little bit early. But I think she's tactical enough. She can make her position from this spot, is what you would hope if you bet this horse. And if she runs as impressively as she did last time, like, she didn't look like a fluke in that race. So if you didn't know the odds, she looked powerful in that race. I mean, it was a shock to most people, but if she could come back with that same performance, I think she's right there with this field. And unfortunately, you're getting her at 4-1 as opposed to the 46-1 last time.
Paul.
Yeah, right, Paul. I know that's,
and therein lies the problem, Peter.
But again, it's different in a pick 5. I wouldn't bet that horse to win necessarily, but it's hard to not include in a pick 5. Yeah.
Pete, she's going to have to deal with a very fast filly from the Pletcher barn that Paul's got on top. The number 5 Miracle, Windstar Irad. She was a sneaky play in the fair, and the Rachel Alexandra ran well. She almost beat pretty mischievous. I mispronounced it last week. We all said mischievous a bunch of times, by the way. And someone emailed me and said, Howard, you were wrong. They were correct. I was wrong. Pretty mischievous. Who lost pretty soundly, but looks like to a pretty good filly last week. Paul, what is Miracle? I'm assuming she's going to lead, right? Especially with Pletcher's other atomically closing. How do you think she's going to mess with the 8? Pete and Paul, you have that argument because you guys have both speeds on top. Something's got to give in this race.
Yeah. First of all, for the record, I did not say mischievous once. I'd just like to get that into the record, Your Honor.
that was me then. My apologies.
Secondly, I think in this field, pretty mischievous or pretty mischievous would be 3-5, justifiably. I thought, Howard, that South Lawn guy, Raylu, we talked about at the top of the show, Norm Cassie's horse, just ran an absolute monster in that race. Pretty mischievous, looked like she was home in that race. So I really, this horse is a single for me. I love this horse in this race.
Wow.
I just think she's got the best number. No disrespect to the 8 horse, but the way she should treat the 8 is like the 8's not there, in my opinion. And I just think, this.
Pete, these are fighting words tonight from Mr. Halloran.
You asked me what she should think about the 8. I think her biggest threat is her stablemate right to the right. Pletcher's other horse. I just think this horse sits a great trip. You get Irad. I think that the Rachel Alexandra obviously came back okay, although, Tom Amos is one of my favorite people in the business, but it looks like Hoosier Philly is the most overrated horse in the last quarter century.
Oh, my goodness.
But, hey, you know what? Look, so he was wrong about it. That's the way it goes.
But Paul, I gotta press you, Mr. Journalist here. Is Miracle going to have the lead? Because isn't Pete's horse from further outside has to send? Or Pete, do you think your horse can sit off a Miracle and go by?
No, I would assume both outside horses that I like would sit. Hopefully would try and get position, but get behind Miracle and then attack her on the turn is what I would ideally like. Because Darth Vader
go by is what you're saying, obviously.
Well, yes, yeah, and go by. Okay. It wouldn't shock me if Miracle holds. I think, but she's shown a propensity not to hold in the last 4. The last one was obviously to a really good horse.
Yep.
But still, you've shown that you can run this horse down, so that gives you a little bit more confidence, unless they just let her go and get away.
Guys, I am not giving up on Atomically. I'm sorry. I'm very happy to take divorce papers out, but boy, this just looks like the spot for her. I've been chasing her the last 2 times. The Breeders' Cup was too much. Last time I thought she got a weird kind of inside trip, and Red Carpet Red, he was a nice filly, just went on with it. With all the banging that your 2 top horses look like they will have, and maybe even the 7, if Atomically does not get it done for me Saturday, I am done with her. She's got to run her race. She's going to be tactical, sitting behind the speed. She's been working well. I think they're pointing to the spot, second off the layoff. I really like Atomically in this spot. Peter Appleby, who is a fantastic handicapper, by the way, who also has been on with a graduate of the Matt Bernier show as well, if I recall. Peter, thanks for joining the show. We really appreciate it. Long time no see. Peter likes Atomically also. And you know what, guys? I'm going very deep in this race because I don't trust 3-year-old fillies as far as I could throw them. which is not very far. But I've got like a horse like Affirmative Lady in third. Why? Because it's blinkers on motion and she's a 2-turn horse. She's slow. She's slow, guys, and she makes no sense other than this race. For some reason, I don't trust Miracle. I don't trust the 8. I don't know if the 7 is going to be good enough second time out. Atompoly's been disappointing. I'm even throwing the 1 in there, guys, Flakes, who, I don't know, she gets the rail. She's run well. She's working well. It's a Frosted. I mean, I don't know, guys. This race to me, I think you have to do either what you're doing, Paul, which is singling. Or Pete, I think you said you might be singling too. I don't recall.
No.
Sorry,
No.
what Paul's doing, either single or a spread. Because guys, I just don't trust these lower morning line horses. I don't trust any of them at all.
Can't argue with it. I mean, I think this whole division has been, throw it up in the air and see what sticks, because I don't know what's going on, right, Paul? I mean, I'm sure you're maybe in the same.
I'll tell you that Raylu horse that won that race at Louisiana last Saturday could be as good as any of them, right? Norm Cassie was on.
Other than what paint?
Howard, we may have to have Raylu on the night before the Oaks. What do you think?
I think we might have to do that. We'll talk. I like that idea. I think it's South Lawn. That's the name of the horse, right?
Yeah.
South Lawn, yes.
I don't see why she's not the second best filly next to Wet Paint right now.
Well, if Wet Paint doesn't run well this weekend, the favorite for the Oaks is going to be a horse who's never run on dirt, most likely. So,
who's that?
Botanical is has been the most impressive horse, and she's never stepped foot on dirt. So she might be the favorite, because I think a lot of people doubt Wet Paint. Not that we want to get into that, but I think they doubt every horse has sort of warts, and Wet Paint's is, let's see her on a fast track before we anoint her as the Oaks favorite.
Yeah. Looks like we got a little bet on the side there, Paul. If people are interested, you can take a look at that. All right, let's go on. Let's go on to the second to last race, guys. The penultimate race, as they say. This is the Appleton. This is for the older boys. 150,000 on the turf. They're going a mile. Notice again, the rails are now out 56 feet. Guys, let's put me on. It's important to talk about this, because if you watch Bias, it might have a factor. We know they're pretty much running on turf at this point. It's just absolutely, it's been raining. There's nothing Gulfstream can do, but they're trying to find any kind of grass, any kind of green grass at all. You can't blame them. So they're running on paths where the rails are all the way out at 56, and where paths are all the way in on the rail. But those rail positions make a big difference. So just keep that in mind. You can see this race there. It's got a field of 12. This is a huge field. I'm going to guess the morning line favorite will be the number 7 Win From Within with Delgado and Chantel. That would be my guess. Pete, we'll go with you first. You and I are both going. Actually, all three of us are going with the same 3, believe it or not, but in different order. Pete, you and I are going with number 5, Fort Washington. And I got to say, that last race to me, when I watched it again, super, super impressive second place. I think you tipped him out last time, Pete, at like 13-1, or maybe that was Paul's. One of you two tipped this horse out. Maybe it was me. I have to go back. I don't remember. One of us tipped this horse out, and he ran huge last time. What do you like about Fort Washington, Pete, in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, the replays, if you watch the last 2, are pretty impressive. And again, it's one where this horse came back off a 3-month layoff, basically a little shorter than that. First race in 2023, closes like that after being way back, being a step slow early, pops a 95 lifetime buyer top. So again, you're hoping that there's that progression from 3 to 4, and then that can eventually translate into some wins. The problem with this horse is he leaves himself so much to do. He's as slow as you could possibly get. When you watch every one of his races, he just can't break at all. And he breaks dead last. He's always in the back. The only good thing is, if you look at the time forms, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 8 horses in this race with 100 or higher time form early pace. Now, every time we say that, it never works. But in theory, on paper, this looks to be a race with a ton of speed. And I'm looking at a horse who by far has the highest late pace, and you could see he's just a monster closer. Now, if you're, go ahead.
He's the 4. He breaks okay. He just breaks a little bit slow. It's just what he does. The 10 is the 6, I believe, on Saturday. Steady On, who runs very well and gets a perfect trip. Super Dormy, if you want a little bit of a price, was right here. Was rank. You'll see the 7 is going to be rank later on in the race and was a little bit wide. I don't love him, but he did get a bit of an interesting trip. I will say that as this horse Super Dormy, you'll see is going to tip to the outside. You see, look how like rank and under. You see his head there, uncontrollable. Meanwhile, the 10 steady on is getting a dream trip. Fort Washington's not even in the picture. You're going to see even more. Look at this. Look how rank. But they were going slow. They're not going to go slow this time. So Super Dormy is not going to be rank because the pace is going to be much different. But these two you see right here are both running on Saturday. And then you're going to see a complete flash come from the back of the pack, just right barely in the picture. Now out of the picture. We'll come back into the picture. Right here in green is Fort Washington. Go ahead, Pete. Take us through the stretch.
Yeah, and if you look here, you see right now it's still sort of on the inside, so it doesn't get that clean run. Now starts to move a little bit, and you could watch here. The 8, unfortunately, is dying in his face a little bit, so he has to squeeze. We talked about a little bit of the athleticism, and this horse is just eating up ground. So after that tough start, you could just see that this horse has the kick. It just has to find
scalp out, guys. The scalp out's insane. I know people make fun of me. I don't really what?
Yeah, you see.
I'll let it run. I mean, okay. What does this mean, guys? That means this horse had a shit ton of energy left. That's what that means. That's why it's important, Pete, at least in my handicapping opinion.
Well, and you look at it too as Emmanuel is one of the horses people consider as maybe one of the top turf horses that we're going to see this year. And this horse was closing, and this field does not have an Emmanuel in it. So,
no.
But again, whenever you're relying on a horse that can't start and has to close from the back of the pack, you just need a lot to go right. And the hope is that it does, and we see a huge pace meltdown.
David, this is why we show replays, and I appreciate it. Look, not every gallop out matters, okay? I want to make this very clear because I'm one of those people are very yin-yang about gallop out. Sometimes they don't matter a damn thing. That replay, Paul, to me, matters because it just shows you how much energy he had left. And what I want to ask you, Paul, is this, because this is a particular question I wanted to ask you guys about this. This race is only, a mile, I think, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, Paul, people get into the bad handicapping habit of thinking, oh, Fort Washington needs more ground because that last race is 1:16. But because this race is a mile, Paul, doesn't that also mean that there could be a faster pace, which actually might work towards Fort Washington's advantage?
I agree with that philosophy 100% as far as the distance. You know, it's like when horses are stretching out from sprints to routes and they're breaking dead last in sprints, and people say, well, they'll have more time to come from behind. Oh, great! So they'll just be further back. I think that's a valid point. How he might have more of a punch. That's why turf sprints, which I know you love dearly, Howard. How many turf sprints do you see that are won from horses coming from nowhere? A lot of turf sprints are won like that. So I do agree with that. The horse I picked I thought had almost a winning effort last time. I think Emmanuel's a really good horse. This horse was a few pass wide on each turn. Clean trip, but got the right trip, took the lead, and looked like a winner, and just got nabbed by Emmanuel. So yeah, could he get nabbed by Fort Washington? Absolutely. But as I know one thing, and Pete brings up a good point. You really, if you're betting Fort Washington, you really are trip dependent to a degree. As far as keeping him out of trouble, and hopefully he's in somewhat touch with the field. But that was an explosive move. But again, Howard, up the rail on turf, we've seen two horses get good runs up the rail on turf. That is not always there. It's much more common that you have to go outside.
Well, my concern, Pete, too, he's got to weave through 7, 8, 9 horses. I don't care how good he is. That's risky. I mean, you and I are going to take that risk in this field, but he still is going to have to work out a trip one way or another. And while you've got a horse like Within, Paul, you've got second. I've got second. Pete, you've got third. Paul, this horse with Chantel, who's very capable, is faced the best horses, has lost Emmanuel and City Man and Kentucky Ghost in his last 3. And is the confirmed speed. The issue is sometimes he can't get the job done, and there's other speed in the race.
I'll tell you, he really ran his eyeballs out in that City Man. I mean, it's not just City Man, Howard. Remember, Decorated Invader. Oh, wasn't that a good exacta?
Ran huge.
And you know, this horse led to the stretch, and that was 1.1 miles. So yeah, maybe he won't be quite as sharp at a mile, but if Chantel gets a comfortable lead here, and Ratchet, you know, you're looking at it here, Decorated Invader at 21-1. City Man just ran huge here, as we'll see.
There's in between is when within fighting.
And we're so happy that Decorated Invader came back to get second, aren't we, at 21-1?
By the way, look how much different the turf was in December than what. It's just crazy, isn't it? I mean,
yeah. Well, when you're running
but...
when you're running year round on it, it's going to get going to get chopped up. Yeah, I think Win From Within is a definite threat. More of a B for me, but someone better keep him company early, because if Chantel gets an easy lead and easy fractions, this horse could be tough.
We should mention real quick, and then we'll go to the Florida Derby, Dreams of Tomorrow, who's a horse that you know, Paul, very well, is run in New York often. Tough spot from the 12 hole going a mile off a layoff, but is capable in the right circumstances.
Yeah, you know how on my sheet I have PP as a post position and then an X. I mean, this is a really tough.
Yeah.
This is a really tough spot going a mile. Just look at your form, folks. Howard, you can point it out at the top of page 1 where they show the track diagram. Look where the start line is in relation to the first turn.
Yeah.
It's on it. So Mr. Castellano, a Hall of Famer, has his work cut out. I would like.
How about
this,
Paul? Do you see the top, Paul? Where again, this is just an estimation, but if this is correct, you've got this horse parked in the 3-path into a fast pace, not the best situation. If this is correct.
that would be the worst case scenario if that takes, because if the horse is going to be that far back, Howard, you might as well be down on the hedge or wherever on the rail. The hedge is apparently about a half a mile away.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's talk about the Florida Derby. This is the last race of the sequence.
It's the Curlin, Howard. It's the Curlin.
Oh, there! I didn't get this. There you go. Okay. Man, Paul is so astute, Pete. We could just unbelievable, isn't he?
My guy, Curlin.
It's his guy, of course. I mean, what's he gonna do?
The Curlin Florida Derby, presented by Hillendale Farms at Alapa. How's that?
Yes.
Great one.
Curlin now could probably finish second in this race, unfortunately, based on
after breeding four mares that day.
He still would probably finish second at this race. So,
guys, it's $1 million race. It's 1.1 miles. It's the premier race, of course, at Gulfstream. It's won by Pletcher several times. Will he do it again? We'll see. He's got the big favorite here. It's, of course, for 3-year-olds. They're going 1.1 miles. So they're finally stretching out. Let's go ahead and show the field here. We do have morning lines. It's a big field of 12, 4-5 on Forte. Pletcher and Irad, the Kentucky Derby anti-post favorite right now at about 3-1. Second choice is a horse called Fort Bragg, who used to be Pletcher, is now Yachteen. Decided to ship here, which is interesting for with Rosario in the saddle. I'm going to say my strong opinions for the end. Pete, you are going to go with the favorite Forte. Actually, you and I are both going the same two on top. Forte first, and then Mage, I believe it's pronounced, in second. Let's talk about Forte first, Pete. Not much to say. It's just tons the best on paper in this spot.
Yeah, I don't really have to say too much. I mean, it's the best horse out of the crop against a field of horses who I don't assume any of these other horses should even be in the Derby. So this, theoretically, if he can get the right trip and not fall into any wild trouble, and the distance for some reason, 1.1 miles doesn't bite him, then Forte should win this by multiple lengths like last time.
There's one thing I want to, a lot of things I want to talk about. I'll talk about. I'll bring up the interesting parts about the backstories in a minute. Let's talk about the horses specifically first. Mage. Now, you've got this horse second. So do I, Pete. I thought he ran sneakily good against Forte last time, and he's got two big advantages to me in this race. One is he's one of the fastest early, and he's quality. And two, he's inside a lot of the speed, and in theory, he's going to get to the rail. if he wants to lead, I'm assuming he could. But if he doesn't break perfectly, or he doesn't, want to send and they want to sit, he should get a good trip. And by the way, Paul and Pete, the damn side, this is a horse out of a Big Brown mare who, last time I checked, ran pretty well in the Florida Derby back in the day from I believe the 12 hole. I got to look it up. I think that was from
It
the
was
12
the 12.
hole. Pete, what do you like about Mage?
By the way, Big Brown was my bachelor party in Vegas. I watched Big Brown win the Florida Derby, and
Wow.
then at my wedding, I watched Big Brown win the Preakness at my wedding. At my cocktail hour, they wheeled in a TV so we could watch Big Brown win the Preakness. So anything Big Brown related is okay in my book. So
Very exciting. Well, what do you like about this horse is chocolate, not brown, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, just chocolate. I'll take it though. I like chocolate too. That's all right.
I will show the replay, and you can talk about why you like this horse.
I think this horse actually didn't get the best of trips in that last one. Obviously, watch the
against Forte and a few others. Sorry, it's slow.
Actually, hit the gate. Yeah, so you could. I don't know if you could see it well from.
Yeah, you'll see it a little bit.
You could see it a little, but you see And this is a horse who theoretically people were thinking was going to be on or very much close to or on the lead, and then breaks like that, and now is stuck outside. And you're talking about a horse who has only run one maiden race and now is in this position. Against a quality field. Yeah. And it's a quality. It wasn't the best field, but it's still better than you'd get in a normal maiden race. So I think that had a little bit going against him. And then you see him here, and he sort of flattens out. Yeah, Forte
he stuck on well against Rocket Can.
He also took a little hit there. Yeah. And
you had a little, had a study there. But normally I think this horse was going to give it up. He doesn't really give it up here. He's still running on. I like that.
Yeah. And again, that was probably a little too much too soon. And especially with everything that went wrong. So especially at the morning line, I actually was fishing more for price in this one, because I'm only obviously going to single Forte theoretically in a pick 5, but I was fishing for prices. And the fact that this one was 10, I just don't like the horses that were lower. So I was like, oh, this one at least has some upside, and we don't really know what he is yet. But he's got the breeding to be something pretty good.
I think he's interesting. I think for me, if for some reason Forte stubs his hoof, I think Mage is the one to do it. I really do. And I'll tell you why I want this horse to run well, Paul, selfishly for you and I want more speed in the Derby to set it up for our TT. And this could be one of those horses that could definitely create more speed in the Derby. I'm already thinking ahead like that. So to me, it does matter. Paul, Paul Halloran. We keep talking about Mage. You love
I was
Mage.
waiting for you to look at Mage. I was waiting for you to look at the picks.
If only we would ask the guy who picked him.
If only they were scrolling on the bottom of the screen for everyone to see. Sorry, Paul. I didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
No, you guys were eloquent in talking about why this horse is going to win.
Why don't you embellish
Major
a little
host
bit?
fail. Major host fail. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I believe Forte's obviously the best horse, but if we're going to spend all this time, and no one spends more at it than Pete on statistics, the 11 post going a mile and an eighth at Gulfstream is horrific. It's not bad. It's horrific. And I don't want to hear about open air. And I don't want to hear about how, it's a terrible post. Pletcher, who very rarely shows any emotion, about as upset as he's going to be, said after the draw, it's a terrible draw. Okay. Look, if you're going to beat him, you may have as good a chance beating him today as down the line. It's a terrible spot. This horse is 10-1. Forte's an A for me. I'm not stupid. But if Forte's going to get beat, it's going to be from the 11 post at Gulfstream going a mile and an eighth. That's all.
You've got Fort Bragg second, though, and he's only one spot inside of Forte, just for the record.
Yeah, but yes, he did. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about who I like to win the race, the 4.
Well, you.
Sorry.
Well, but you've got Fort Bragg second. You think Fort Bragg is going to finish ahead of Forte, but Fort Bragg is still way the F out there also.
Yeah, but he's one slot inside.
But it's not the 11.
Wait a minute. This much a difference is going to matter?
Look at what are the
my
odds on
Lord.
Fort Bragg?
Come on,
Look
Paul
at,
Halloran, you're better than that.
well, I'm going to tell you what. If you'll see my pick 5, I am very deep in this race, trying to beat Forte and end
Okay.
it with a price because I think the opportunity is there. If Forte
Okay.
is in 1 through 7, 1 through 8, I don't think the opportunity is there. Fort Bragg, I think, has a puncher's chance to make the board. He's 5 or 6 to 1. He's going to be higher than that. And Fort Bragg, by the way, was a former Baffert horse, not a Pletcher horse.
Former.
Mr. Kravitz. You said
Former.
but you said
Oh,
Pletcher.
did I say Pletcher?
Yes.
Did I? Okay.
Yes.
I didn't think I did.
I wasn't listening, so you go ahead.
Well, of
Well, I
course.
was because I wasn't talking about Mage.
Paul, can I bring up a good question by Right at the Wire? He says, did the lack of buyer progression bother you all about Mage? I think we showed the replay as to why I'm not concerned, because I think he
Yes.
would have progressed if he got a better situation. No?
I think that trip was a lot better, a lot worse watching it, Howard, than it looks on paper.
I
To be
agree.
very
I thought he
honest
ran
with you.
huge.
I thought he ran huge, and the
Yeah.
buyer it was 1 point down, and if Howard and I are in the Tapper Trice camp, we're not getting overly concerned with buyer regressions in the last race. We know they're going to bounce back up.
Okay, so guys, is there any, first of all, before I go on a little bit of a diatribe here, is there any other horse you guys want to talk about? Either
Yeah,
one
you missed the underneath special at 30 to 1, which I have in the third spot here.
Who's that?
The
Which
number
one?
6, Nautical Star.
I think I agree with you, Pete. Talk to us, sir.
I mean, I'm not as bold as Paul to say that the 11 is going to knock Forte out and Nautical Star is going to win this race, but just for the hell of it, I like the fact that if we can get some pace in here, which there's potential for some pace. There's some speed horses in here. This one has really tried to close into terribly slow paces in the first 2 races. The sire side, 22% dirt route, so I'm not too concerned with the stretch out. But now again, everything's going against this horse. We're going from a maiden race at 6 furlongs to a grade 1 going 1 mile and an eighth. So everything is against this horse. I don't think this horse has any chance to win. But again, I'm looking at, I don't like the horses that much from the 2nd to like the 5th spot under Forte. Okay. So why not, if I'm looking for either an underneath in the exacta or an underneath in the triple, let me see if I could pop one with a 30 to 1 with a horse that just could be running late and could clunk up when the other horses who are trying harder to win up front maybe fade.
Okie bred too. We've seen it before. We've seen bombs coming before underneath. Paul, any other horses? And then I'm going to go full screen and talk about a few things here.
No, I went 4, 10, 11, so I'm good.
Guys, I want to say 2 things about this race. First of all, and I want to get your opinions, of course. We want big fields in general, right? But do we want fillers? Do we want 3, 4, 5 horses in this race? Let's be honest. They have no business being in this race at all. It's completely ridiculous. And why it bothers me a little bit is because we want big fields, guys. We want big competitive fields. We don't want just a bunch of nonsense fillers. There's 4 or 5 horses that are complete tosses, and it could F up a horse like Forte, which I don't like that. So let me just throw that question. I mean, I guess there's nothing you can do rules wise, but just any thoughts on what I just said there, either one of you.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I would say with a week before the entries closed, Howard, there were 3 horses listed as probable for this race.
Is Paul shrinking, by the way? Is Paul so embarrassed by his Fort Bragg over Forte that he's shrinking off?
Sitting in his throne from all the money he's going to win when Forte runs third here. That's what he's doing. I
was saying that with a week before entries closed, there were like 3 horses listed. Yeah. So you know what happens, right? Everyone thinks, hey, it's going to be a 6-horse field. I could run 4th and pick up a big check. And now what do you got? And Pletcher, Todd mentioned this on Steve Bick's show yesterday. He said, it looked like the field was going to be a little shorter than it was. And, hey, look at the racing office gets on the phone, right? Hey, you know what? You want to take a shot in the Derby? We only got 5 horses. Next thing you know, you have 12. So I'm kind of with you on that, Howard. But from a betting point of view, it's not the worst thing in the world because, people will bet them. They're not going to bet them heavily, obviously, but every horse is going to take money. So if you think they have absolutely no chance, that's theoretically an advantage for you.
Well, it's a $1 million. They're trying to get a piece.
Right.
Derby knowledge. Derby knowledge. I'm guessing you're new to the show. I don't know if you're talking about us. I hope you are. If you are Derby knowledge, where have you been? First of all, and secondly, thank you very much for joining the show. We like to believe we're pretty good, if that's who you're referring to. So thank you very much, Derby knowledge.
By the way, wait, he had a comment up there. Or he or she, I don't really know. I apologize. Your milkman's horse, Derby knowledge, must be pretty good because Nautical Star is going to run third in this race. So your milkman's horse must be pretty good. So
there we go.
And your milkman's
That's
horse,
a smart milkman.
The way this field shaped up, your milkman's horse could have made this field. So I'm not. That's not surprising, unfortunately.
Guys, here's my other thing. And Paul, I want to address your going against Forte issue because I've heard a lot of people, some I respect, some I don't, suggesting that the post situation and this is a means to an end to get to the Derby, and he won't be all out. And let me say this. First of all, let me talk about your stat, Paul. From the 11 hole, horses are 0 for 10 in the last 10. I got two thoughts on that. Number one, who's been running out of the 11 hole, number one. And number two, there's never been a horse coming out of the 11 hole in that stat that's remotely close to Forte compared to the rest of the field. So while you are absolutely correct that the outside posts are not good, to me, here's what I feel is going to happen, guys. I think Forte is going to just break normally. Ira's not going to send crazy. He doesn't need to because other horses are going to be sending crazy. He'll let the horse just gather naturally. He'll be mid-pack, and he'll blow by the field around the turn without even being 100% or being asked all out because he's just tons the best. And if anyone out there, Paul, anyone, in my opinion, thinks Pletcher does not want to win this race, it's $1 million grade one, or that IRAD doesn't really want to win, or they're not going to try as hard because they don't want to expend the energy. Pete and Paul, I think that's complete bullshit. They want to win this race. Are they going to go all out and go 100% with this horse? No. Paul, I don't think they need to. Pete, I think if he runs 90, 95%, 90%, he wins this race. They want to win this race, Paul. Anyone who thinks they don't.
I agree. Yeah, I don't. My picking against them has nothing to do with that. Like they're saving it for the Derby. I mean,
I've heard some people say that.
I don't think Irad's going to crack them 12 times with the whip in the stretch, regardless of what happens. And I think he's going to be smart about it. But hey, the race is perfectly spaced. I think Saturday is 5 weeks, I believe, Howard, right? 5 weeks to the Derby. So, that means, three solid works in between. My pick against him was strictly, I think if you're going to beat him, he's going to be 3 to 5 in this race. It is a bad post at 1 1/8. And I think if you're going to nab him, this is the spot to try to nab him. And, if I want to beat the favorite, I want him in the 11, not in the 3. So I'll take my chances.
Would you, and you just real quick for the listeners, would you in your say ABC grid, would you put Forte on top as a single and back them up with your other horses, or would you load up? Because that's not necessarily the best value, or would you put them on other horses on the A line with Forte? Just for the viewers.
I'm gonna use, because Mage, Pete, I've picked on top and it's 10 to 1. I am going to use Mage as an A.
As an A, okay, just checking.
And yes, I know that's giving him equal weight to Forte, but I'm getting more than 10 times the odds.
Yeah.
So
that's
if you're ever alive, if you ever get a high price C early on and you're alive to your A's in that race, I want that Mage.
100%.
12 to 1.
Yeah, 100%.
Steve Pogo asked how many horses will scratch. I've heard a few might scratch. We'll see.
Maybe, 1 or 2, maybe. I heard, Howard.
I don't know. There's some great comments in the chat. We're not going to bring them
but
up.
I think, Howard, one of them's the 12, so that doesn't really help him.
That does not help him. You're right. I'll tell you what will help, though. Pete's pick 5. So let's go right to it.
Yes, let's
Pete's
go.
pick 5, which is $90, is 1689 with 159 with 578 with 3, 5, 6, 7, 12 with 11. He's singling Forte on the end, $90, Pete.
Yeah, and again, this is no odds, so I don't know if some of these, when the odds come out, will look silly if like the 1, 6, 8, 9 are the top 4 choices in that first leg. But the single of Forte, I just think he's the best horse, and I think he's going to win. The other 4 races to me are toss-ups. So I think any one of those, there's not a horse in any one of those other 4 where I look at and say, oh, I'm pretty sure that horse is going to win. Aside from maybe the Chad Brown horse, just because, hey, a Chad Irad Klarovich on turf could win. So in that first leg, maybe the 6th. The other ones are wide open. By the way, David, it was basically when we got engaged, the first day we talked about was Derby Day, and I called my dad the minute after we got engaged, and he said, well, we're not coming if it's Derby Day, so you better pick another date. So we moved to Preakness, but yeah, she's okay. I'll give her some credit for that one. And I went to the track that morning, by the way, and had some beers at the track that morning to put my losing bets in. But okay.
Wow.
But yeah, nothing real crazy on the ticket. I have some prices. Again, I have some bombs. No real strategy aside from I think Forte is the winner, so I want to go deep in some of the other legs. And that the 4th leg is one that I think is just crazy wide open.
Okay, there you go. I like your ticket, Pete. Paul, you've got 6-8 with 2-5-9 with 5, which that's a miracle, correct, Paul? With 5, 6, 7, 12 with 2, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. Paul, I love anything that's out of the box. You know, I'm just giving you some crap. Because if you're right and we're wrong, when I say we, I mean Pete and I, because you'll see my ticket in a second, you are absolutely going to get paid. I like the fact you're singling in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, like I mentioned, although I'm not sure the 5 is going to win, but I'm using her. But I like your strategy here, Paul. Go ahead and talk. $72 ticket.
Well, my thinking is, in all seriousness, if we're going to beat Forte, I'm going to need I'm going to need an army to beat him, even with the bad post. So, you know, you should put a disclaimer underneath that. Don't try this at home. But, you know, again, I do like that miracle. And, you know, for $72, if you could ever be alive into the pay leg, you know, probably 4 of those would trigger fairly substantial payouts. So
you got West Coast Cowboy, the Gary Mary West bred horse.
I got everyone.
Out of a 10 pins mare. Remember 10 pins was a really nice filly who won some races.
I actually do remember 10 pins.
Or that was a boy, right? That was a boy. I'm sorry, that was a boy.
Yes.
But 10 pins was a nice like distance 2-turn horse, right? Do I remember that horse correctly? I think so. Anyway, you got some bombs in here, Paul. I like it. You got Mr. Whipple. Boy, you got Saffy fever, don't you? Boy, do you have Saffy fever.
Like I say, it's $72 to make 5 figures potentially. It's a minus $72, but you know what? I think I'm going to have to put it in just for shits and giggles now.
Hey, two Saffies can just circle Forte and just stay and, you know, box him in, and the other Saffie comes in, and Paul is just buying us, you know, champagne and diamonds after that.
And listen, we've seen crazier shit happen. Who knows? My ticket is 368. Oh, I didn't ask the question because I think it's obvious, guys, in this one. 368 with 125, with 1456, with 567, 12, with 11 ceiling Forte. It's pretty straightforward. I have a hard time believing either one of those Clements or Miss Sasser's can get beat in that second leg. The third leg, guys, I'm throwing in the 1 and the 4 along with the Pletchers. Pete, you could absolutely be right. I'm just against the 2 outside horses. The 8's got to prove it to me again, and the 7's got to go 2 turns the first time. And a miracle is going to cause a lot of problems for both of them. So I'm going some wacky horses there with the 1 and the 4 also. I'm going pretty standard 5, 6, 7, 12 in the turf. And then singling Forte. I think Forte is going to win. I don't know if he's going to win by half a length or by 4. I don't think Forte needs to be all out to win this race. And I think he's going to get an okay trip because I think he can just break from the gate and be like mid-pack. And even if he's a little bit wide, that's fine. He's in the clear. I know Pletcher doesn't like the post. Of course he doesn't like the post, guys. Who wants the 11 post? No one. He also knows this horse is absolutely tons the best. If Forte does not win, it's going to take something strange or he just won't fire. It's horse racing. Guys, as we end the show, Paul, I'll let you go first. Final thoughts. We're going to talk about the Arkansas Derby card on Thursday. The Bettin and Boozin boys have a nice undercard stakes they're going to talk about tomorrow. Anything else you want to talk about, Paul, going into the second to last big Derby prep races of the season?
Yeah, I just think it's a tremendous betting card. There are 10 stakes races, 5 graded stakes on the Gulfstream card. And then, you know, the Oaklawn card kicks in. So it's It's a great day to do what I did last Saturday, which is play races. Although I don't have to start at 8 a.m. this week. I could start a little later. I was happy to bet the Godolphin Mile at 8 a.m. local time last Saturday. What is it? Nothing better to do on a Saturday
Coffee
morning.
and horses
Nothing.
and donuts, or whatever people do in the
No
morning.
doubt.
Pete?
I'll actually answer one of the questions in the chat. There was a question about why I would put Red Route 1 ahead of Disarm on my list when Asmussen opinion is basically opposite. To me, I don't think either one is going to win the Derby, but I have a little bit more confidence that Red Route 1 has the experience to maybe get in the triple or super, and Disarm to me might be better a little bit further down the road in some of the post-Derby races. I'm not sure if the Derby won't be a little bit too much too soon for that one. I thought he ran a great race in the Louisiana Derby to get second, but the others, I think he ran the race he should. I don't think that race does that much in the Derby. So that just to end on that note, I think everything from basically 4 or 5 down, you can shake a hat and pick them out of a hat, and then you can yes. Let's not do that yet. Yeah, the bald head crew here, but I think they're all in the mix, and we'll see what happens. But I like Red Route 1, and I know Paul does too. I think that's a horse that can just close and hit something.
Paul has several Derby future exactas with Red Route 1 second.
I see. This is what I'm saying. That's exactly what I think. I'm not sure Red Route 1 that usually doesn't win, and I don't know if he's talented enough to win it.
I know,
but
they're monstrous, by the way.
He can look at it, lead it up for second or whatever. One of those other bombs that got
Howard, if it ever comes back, Tapper Trice over Red Route 1, I'll be in Chicago by midnight to start drinking with
Wow. First of all, why aren't you coming here anyway for the Tapper Trice Derby show that we're going to have either at my place or maybe Matt Miller's? We haven't even discussed Derby Day yet, but it's going to happen somewhere, and there will be food and beverage, I guarantee, on that day. Unless, I haven't said this publicly, should I say it? Outside chance, very serious, outside chance my brother and I are going to the Derby. This year's Derby. Possibly, we'll see. I'll get back to everyone on that. We actually have
There's an outside chance I'm going to be there too, Howard, for other reasons.
Okay. We actually have hotel arrangement, and we have some golf tee times because my brother and I would make a weekend of it. The only thing we don't have is the Derby tickets. Small little issue there, but we'll see. Got some things in the works. Guys, really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun tonight. Again, show tomorrow night, 9 p.m., Wednesday, Bettin and Boozin, and then we'll be back Thursday, 8 p.m., talking about the Arkansas Derby. For my wonderful co-hosts, Paul Halloran, Pete Visco, I've been your host, Howard Kravitz, episode 241 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, hit the notification bell, subscribe to our Power Picks, and we'll see you this Thursday night to talk about the Arkansas Derby. Crush those bets on Florida Derby Day. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.